Okay, we'll just start inviting folks to join us. Got a couple minutes here before we get started. I'm going to click on welcome everyone. Got a couple more minutes before we get rolling here. Got to do a few little housekeeping things to manage the system. So bear with us as we get rolling. All right. Going live on Facebook now. Hopefully. Never know. Looks like we're getting engaged. Yep, looks like we're good, Mike. Facebook, that's good. All right, people are starting to join us. Still got a couple minutes before we get started. Q&A. Hey, Jeff Scott, nice to see you, man. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, Tara, over there in Pennsylvania. Yeah, fun. As you guys are, as everyone starts to join in here, be sure that you open your Q&A, click that little icon at the bottom of your screen there, and hover over it, click on it. That'll open your Q&A, and then you can type in your name and say howdy, where you're from. Hey, Laura, nice. Lane, thank you. I think we're good on Facebook, Lane. Looks like we're rolling there. Glad to see that. Been pretty effortless. Good deal. Yeah, more people joining. Good. Just for those of you who are logging in, just remember to click on your Q&A because that's where we're going to be communicating. If you have a question, thank you, Lane. I appreciate that. Looks like we're good to go there. Always love to have that check. Well, it's 3 o'clock, so I want to get started. So just remember, click on your Q&A icon at the bottom of your toolbar when you open Zoom. You see the green button over to the right, and then just type in a howdy. Karen, thank you. Hey, William Foster, nice to see you. Hi, Donna, thank you. Our good friend Donna Fletcher, she's our marketing communications manager. My gosh, I couldn't do any of this without her. She's special, wonderful. Appreciate everything she does. So, as I said, if for some reason you're not seeing us, you need to be sure that you've downloaded and are running Zoom, because that will allow you then to engage with us, open the Q&A, and be able to ask questions during our webinar. So make sure that you've got that open. Our chat box has been disabled, not even visible. So understand, if you want to communicate, please reach out to us through our Q&A. So we have an incredible guest with us today. I'm so excited about Mr. Mike Mooslin being with us. He has been such a wonderful supporter of the Career Alliance from the very beginning, and we love everything that he is and what he does and all his wonderful accolades, which are so many. He spent 25 years as a chief operating officer and of Color Me Mine and president of Color Me Mine Enterprises until his retirement in 2019. He's also president and chief operating officer of Los Angeles-based Koo Koo Roo, which in 1998, he was the creator of home meal replacement concept. Mike will talk a little bit more about that. And then prior to Coloring Mine, he spent 37 years in the restaurant industry. He's a graduate in economics from UCLA and a frequent guest lecturer, and we'll talk more about that later, at the UCLA Department of Economics. He's a lifelong Christian Scientist, currently the first reader at First Church of Christ Scientists in Newport Beach, which I happened to visit on Wednesday through Zoom, just like we're doing here. He's taught the high school class, the college class in Newport for 50 years, and is currently teaching an online class for the First Church of Christ Scientists in Boston, the mother church. He's been a chaplain. I could just go on and on and on, but you know, the best thing for me to do now is to turn it over to Mike and let Mike get rolling. So as we break out of this lockdown in various forms and ways, I thought it would be great to have a discussion about entrepreneurship. And who better to talk about it than one of the best entrepreneurs that I know. So Mr. Mooslin, let's get my screen shared so that you can begin your talk.
Well, thank you, Robin.
Yeah, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Secret sauce, huh? Okay. I first heard the term secret sauce when I was a teenager working at McDonald's. The company was introducing a new burger called, you might have heard of it, the Big Mac. We all wanted to know what was in the sauce. And they told us it was a secret. Thus the name secret sauce was coined, and we called it that from that day forward. The question is, what is your secret sauce? Your special, unique gift. Why are you here today? Are you looking for employment, money, security? If so, you're not thinking big enough. Why not seek that which inspires you to higher accomplishments? We mustn't start from a standpoint of a limited need or problem. You know, the Bible doesn't start, in the beginning, oh, problem of mine. And the Lord's Prayer doesn't start, my problem, which art on earth. Of course, we know they both start with God. And God must be first and only. And he has much bigger plans for you than just finding a job or making money. Excuse me, get my screen back up here. Mrs. Eddy writes in Miscellaneous Writings, the mere puppets of the hour are playing only for money and at a fearful stake. As we glorify God, we tune in to the blessings just waiting for us to discover. God knows what we need even before we ask. Quoting a 1979 journal article called Supply and Transparency, the writer says, lack isn't truly overcome by getting more money, education, or possessions, but by relinquishing the concept of limitation. Real supply isn't things coming to us. It's ideas appearing through us, through the transparency, the clarity, purity, and spirituality of enlightened thought. Let me just repeat that. Lack isn't truly overcome by getting more money, education, or possessions, but by relinquishing the concept of limitation. Real supply isn't things coming to us, it's ideas appearing through us, through the transparency, the clarity, purity, and spirituality of enlightened thought. Enlightened thought. There it is. A unique gift from God to you. Enlightened thought is your secret sauce, your weapon in the battle, a barrier to entry by others. But that means reading the spiritual landscape as well as the competitive one and focusing on what you are seeing as an unmet need as opposed to simply your own economic gain. I'm reminded of the little-known story in the book of Numbers about Balak and Balaam. Balak was a king of Judah at the time and goes to the prophet Balaam and asks him to curse the children of Israel as he's fearful they will overtake his country. But Balaam says he needs to pray about it. Well, he did. And that night, God said to him, "No, the children of Israel are blessed. You may not curse them." When Balaam told Balak he could not, since God would not approve, Balak responded by offering Balaam a promotion, power, and money, lots of it. Balaam responded that if Balak were to fill his house with gold and silver, he would not betray God's will. Now, what would you or I have done in that situation? All spiritual advancement, and that includes your business success, comes from God revealing his plan to our thought. In other words, inspiration, as opposed to humanly willing, manipulating, or outlining something to happen. When we're receptive to a higher thought, human consciousness becomes enlightened. New ideas reveal themselves, and we must remain loyal to that inspiration and stay focused on the good it foresees. For example, the intense focus and persistence of some famous modern visionaries, I think the current term is market disruptors, the Wright brothers, Elon Musk and Stephen Jobs, each developed products that change forever the way we live. Wilbur and Orville, however, didn't invent flight. Jobs didn't invent the laws behind the smartphone technology. Musk didn't invent electricity for vehicles. What they did was discover pre-existing laws that only needed to be discovered and then put into practice. These were ideas that were needed before anyone realized the need. The laws and ideas that informed their discoveries have always existed. The laws of flight existed before man was on the earth. So what was its source? There must have been an intelligent source, something Christian scientists refer to as divine mind, the same mind that was also in Christ. So here's the question of the hour. What is your yet to be discovered idea that you will bring to the world? Think big. Now think bigger. Think about the future needs of mankind. But you need to listen, really listen to what the mind of Christ has in store for you. The key is being responsive to the need, even when no one else knows they have a need. Here are two personal examples. In the 60s and 70s, women were entering the workforce in record numbers in this country. They weren't home cooking meals for their family. Two incomes were needed for mortgages then. And there was rising divorce rates, so a lot of working women. And the hottest industry at that time was fast food. In many cases, fast food preempted the family tradition of having a home-cooked dinner together. Mom didn't have any time to prepare the meal. And I saw a need, being in the restaurant business, of a new kind of restaurant that would serve fresh, homemade quality food that working moms could bring home with pride. And I called the concept home meal replacement. I wrote some articles about it in the restaurant news. And I took over the management of a failing chain called Koo Koo Roo as a vehicle for my idea. Home meal replacement is now commonplace in the restaurant industry, but it was non-existent at the time. Later in the mid-1990s, Koo Koo Roo was being sold. Its subsidiary was a pottery painting concept called Color Me Mine, and it was losing the company $3 million a year on its 14 pottery painting studios. We were publicly held at the time, and the company was being sold. And former Chrysler chairman Lee Iacocca, who was on our board at the time, came in my office and asked me to get rid of Color Me Mine. He said it was a loser and killing the sale of Koo Koo Roo to El Torito, who eventually bought our restaurants. I didn't want to go to work for El Torito. Instead, I opted to buy Color Me Mine. You see, I saw another need that no one was really aware of. There was a need for a communal family bonding concept, accomplishing just what home meal replacement did for restaurants. It came to me that Color Me Mine was the perfect answer. You see, when a family celebrates a special event, what do? They typically go to a restaurant. Each person around that table expresses their own individual expression by ordering something different on the menu. But at the same time, they bond together in a communal activity. And it dawned on me that pottery painting was and is the only activity that duplicates simultaneous communal activity with individual expression. People sit and paint, do their own thing, but they talk. Good idea, but I didn't have the money to buy the assets, nor cover the $3 million in losses. Nonetheless, I held firm to my understanding that the idea came to me with the means needed to be fully realized. My listening, you might say my prayers, paid off. Funding was made available by a source I had never thought of, and I was able to buy the company and turn it around. By the way, the restaurant chain I built around home meal replacement achieved the highest sales per outlet of any quick serve food chain in America. And as for Color Me Mine, it became profitable and the only franchise of its kind for the 30 years that followed, continuing to this day with 150 pottery studios around the globe. You see, purpose was a conduit for profitability. What are you seeing mankind needing today? Open up your entrepreneurial vision. Stay focused on that vision and never become discouraged. Meet all obstacles with prayer, persistence, and resilience, and you'll bring the opportunity to fruition. Align profitability with purpose. Remember that. Your yet to be discovered ideas will attract into your experience like-minded people who share your vision, funders, team members, and most of all, customers. You will need to research the competitive landscape to identify what is missing. Put together your team, show proof of concept, write the business plan, and then execute it with confidence because it is purpose-directed. Of course, you'll need to seek input from others, but beware of those giving advice or attempting to discourage you. Musk, Wilbur and Orville, and Steve Jobs were all told their ideas would not fly, pardon the pun. And they all had severe funding needs, bad press, stiff competition, and many initial failures, but they prevailed, not yielding to discouragement and ignoring opposing human opinions. They were obedient to the vision. Their success was based on the impact of the vision, not the profitability. When God speaks to you, there's no need for advice or confirmation from others. But the big question is, how do you know when it's truly inspiration and not just doing your own brainstorming? In my career, I found 5 surefire signs that told me it was a divinely inspired voice speaking to my thought. And I'll list them for you. First, the new idea is free of self. It's never about you. It's always about God. Good. It's about the idea. No self-pity, no self-justification, no self-indulgence, self-will, or self-promotion. It's not part of the idea. Second, it's free of fear. It has an immediate rightness and peace about it. Third, it's free of lack. It comes with everything it needs to be realized. God would not give you a mission without the means to fulfill it. Fourth, what blesses one blesses all. The success of your idea is not at the expense of anyone else. It's not a zero-sum game. Your winning does not involve another's losing. Competition is not a factor when you are vision-driven. And fifth, unexpected good occurs. That's that $2,000 check in the mail from an aunt you didn't know you had at exactly the time you needed $2,000. Haven't we all had that kind of an experience from one time or another? In other words, God winked at you with a sign that you could not have made happen yourself. When those 5 ingredients are all present, you need to stand and take notice. A new idea is being revealed to you. The question is, are you receptive? So enter the closet referred to on page 15 of Science and Health and quietly listen to the Father, shutting out fear, human opinions, and discouragement. He will answer you when you get yourself out of the way and stay mission-driven. Eddie writes on page 117 of Miscellaneous Writings, God is the fountain of light, and he illumines one's way when one is obedient. The disobedient make their moves before God makes his, or make them too late to follow him. Be sure that God directs your way, and then hasten to follow under every circumstance. Before we go to questions, I'll leave you with a prayer by a 17th century theologian, poet, and writer, the French Roman Catholic Archbishop Francois Fenelon, who wrote, cheered by the presence of God, I will do each moment without anxiety, according to the strength which he shall give me, the work that his divine providence assigns me. I will leave the rest without concern. It's not my affair. Thank you all. And now, Robin, I think we'll take some questions.
Well, I think we will. I wanted to start off, Mike, first. And those are wonderful, wonderful thoughts, wonderful ideas, wonderful inspiration, great examples, Mike. Really, really resonates with me. I wanted to make sure that people had some insight and perspective as to entrepreneurship and kind of where it is today and what's happening. How do you learn about it? If you have an idea, can you get some training? If you're a high school student, can you major in entrepreneurship? I mean, if you're doing things and want to run your business, or even if you don't, you just want to get more information or feel like you want to bring more of that innovation into the organization that you're in, or the company, or in the division. So Mike is a UCLA graduate and very involved in their school currently. So you volunteer and you're a judge. Tell us a little bit about how you interact with UCLA and the type of program that they have there, Mike.
Sure. I've been a guest speaker to the econ classes for the last 6 or 7 years. And for the last, I would say, well, probably 5 or 6 years, I have focused on a subset of entrepreneurial focused classes called social entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where teams, there would be about, I don't know, 50 in a class, and there'd be 10 teams of 5 each. And they would seek a nonprofit that would need funding, a continuous form of revenue generation. And they would have to come up with a for-profit business plan that would support the nonprofit.
Interesting.
And it's become so big that every university across the country has a social entrepreneurship program in their econ department or business department. And venture capitalists have expanded to where there's a whole set of venture capital only focused on social entrepreneurship, which is really well timed today. It's where the action is.
Right. I mean, I had no idea it was so large, so big.
I've been a judge when they have a competition. We just ended one yesterday, in fact, and I mentored one of the teams that ended up winning it. And the prizes, they had $30,000 of prize money.
Wow.
And the presentation was given to a panel of venture capitalists. And so it's the real deal. It's not just an academic assignment. These entrepreneurial ideas are actually put into practice. And they invite industry leaders to come in and speak to the kids. And I've been both a judge, a mentor, and a guest speaker. And in addition, I've spoken to the entrepreneurial classes in the econ department, not social entrepreneur, but just the general business classes. And in both, since it's a for-profit activity in both, what everyone's looking for are three factors: scalability, sustainability, and barrier to entry. Excuse me, and barrier to entry. A secret sauce, something that is missing from the current competitive landscape, something fresh, something new that would be very hard to copy or compete against. And when those three factors are there and it's a worthwhile idea, there doesn't seem to be any limit to the funding available. So really, it just takes inspiration.
So, I mean, there's got to be a shifting landscape within the education community. I mean, this has had to have a major influence on their teaching and the things that their students are doing, the type of activities.
Yeah, and in the last 5 years, we've launched over 200 entrepreneurial ideas.
I mean, that's incredible.
That's just one university.
Yeah, right. Well, that's remarkable. There are other things. There are other programs as well. Like, for instance, Stanford. You mentioned other universities. Stanford has a program. Penn State. I mean, all across the country, you're seeing programs developed in entrepreneurship. I just want to go back one slide, and then going forward. Sorry, the non-traditional way of looking at things. Praxis has a program. It's an intensive 6-month startup boot camp, as well as Coursera has over 292 courses that you can go online from schools that are offered all around the world. So there are lots of resources and options to be able to learn about things. Todd has a question. I thought it's a really good question that maybe you can address. He says, if you have followed an idea you thought was divinely inspired, which resulted in failure, how do you overcome doubt and being able to recognize and be receptive to divine intervention? Great question.
Well, I go back to the example of the three visionaries I mentioned, Jobs, the Wright brothers, and Musk. They had so many failures before they succeeded. They were continually running out of money. And it was, if the idea was right, it was persistent. There would be a time. And sometimes it's not you doing it. Sometimes you need to hook up with a company that shares your vision, and you're just the right person that they're looking for to help it succeed. Don't be discouraged by failure. You'll have multiple failures until you succeed.
I love that, frankly. I think failure is a great educator. I have failed so many times in the different things that I've started and stopped. And, with the Career Alliance, we've had lots of different iterations of things. Everybody, you think that if you fail, it's a horrible thing. But I mean, think about Apple's most recent, iOS 13. I mean, my gosh, it was fraught with failures right out of the box. And, and sometimes you just have to get things rolling, right? I mean, sometimes you have to move in that direction so that the things that you need or the things that you don't see yet can reveal themselves and be and uncovered. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Yeah, I guess the question comes, when you go back to Adam hiding himself from God because he was naked, and what God said to him was, "Who told you you were naked?"
Right.
So my comment is, who told you it was a failure?
Right. Right.
What do you define as a failure? Or is it a step, the next step in the progress and the development of the idea? And boy, I tell you, I've fallen on my face over and over again. You learn each time, and the next time you pull it out.
Kristen, our friend and trustee and fellow alumni guest speaker, asked this question. She says, do you think there's an entrepreneurial DNA that some people have and others don't? Or can someone who has never been entrepreneurial become so as, let's say, a fourth career later in their class schedule of Earth's preparatory school? That's a great question.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And when you go through the Bible heroes, one after another, from Moses to Gideon, it's the most unlikely group of Jacob. It's the most unlikely group of ne'er-do-wells. And they always responded the same way. Me? You got to be kidding.
Right.
Not me. It has nothing to do with your inclination, talents, DNA, or anything else. It has to do with what happens when inspiration calls. It comes to you for a reason. And, Moses fought like crazy to get out of the job of going to let the children go to Pharaoh. And Gideon said, my family is the weakest of everybody here, and I'm the weakest in my family.
Right.
Jacob, poor Jacob was a con man all his life, and until he had that little wrestling match that caused him to wake up. So, it has to do with being receptive to a calling. And your first reaction is, you got to be kidding. Not me. I don't have the money. I don't have the talent. I don't have the experience. No. Listen to the idea that comes to you. It may not be an idea that you develop. It may be something you share, maybe a company you go to work for. But it all comes back to going to God first and listening.
Yeah, I completely agree. Our biblical characters are relevant.
Yeah.
And, there's nothing new that anyone's facing, right? That hasn't been faced before, right? We all think it's all on my, well, it's not. There's nothing new that is going to arise that you can't find inspiration in the Bible to say, well, that's a great idea. That's someone that relates to me. Wouldn't you say? That's kind of what we're talking about, right?
I'm thinking of Noah. I'm thinking of Saul.
Yeah.
The list goes on and on and on.
Right. Yeah, and guys that said, hey, that is not me. I'm not that guy. But hey, listen.
How about the brothers that left their father alone, and their fishing was their only source of income to join Jesus in his mission?
And I love Sarah, her entrepreneurial spirit, never giving up, always looking, always searching, always seeing, and then things opening up that was unexpected. I want to move along to a couple of other things. I did want to mention, if any of you know of successful entrepreneurial programs in your area or that you've been involved with, put them in the Q&A. Someone put in career tech in a California community colleges. Are there? Yeah, and you know what? There's all kinds of incredible, wonderful programs at our local community colleges all across the country. I have just so impressed. All of my kids, most of my kids, I can't say all of them, but many of my kids have gone through community college, and we have just been incredibly blessed by that. Here's another question. How do you determine the difference between failure that is to be a lesson and failure that highlights that the inspiration is actually human determination? Ooh, good question, William. Thank you.
Well, the answer is always the same. Get yourself out of the way.
Right.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Father, what would you have me to do? That's the question. And that really takes a sense of humility, a sense of receptivity, a sense of obedience, a sense of expectation. And when the humility is there, the human will is gone. And when the fear is gone, it just opens up all sorts of things. You know what the definition of fear is? I'll share
Tell
that
us.
with you real quick.
Yeah.
Ingratitude in advance.
Ooh, say that again.
Fear is ingratitude in advance. You're already ungrateful for the bad that you think is going to happen. And so what is love? If perfect love casteth out fear, then love must be gratitude in advance. Jesus, when he raised Lazarus, didn't say, "Oh, Lazarus, I hope you come forth." A lot of people are watching. It'll be embarrassing if I don't pull this off. and the first thing he said was, "Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me." He started off with gratitude. Mm-hmm. And I love that. When you're grateful for what you expect to happen and know that will happen, then you're really approaching it from a spiritual standpoint, a divine standpoint. And human will is never part of that.
Right.
So I hope that answers the question.
So John asked this question: how do you approach, or how would you approach someone in your industry after you've been away from that industry for a few years?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if you've never been in the industry.
I agree.
When you show when you recognize your own natural talents, when you have if you're an artist or a musician, or you're into computers, or you are a graphic designer, whatever it is, when you know that that's a passion of yours. Mine was cooking. It was food. When you know that's a passion, you go out and you meet everybody in that industry. You talk to them. You let them know about your passion and how much you like their company and why you like their company. And I've told this to people over and over. Offer to go to work for them for free. Say, "Let me sweep floors. I just want to learn." And there's not a business owner out there that would not respect that kind of humility, that kind of honesty, that kind of work ethic, that kind of passion. And there's nothing wrong with going to work for a company and learning the industry from the ground up before you launch your venture. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm sure the experience that you had at McDonald's was valuable for you as you moved through the years and years in the restaurant business, right?
The stories I could tell you about Ray Kroc would keep us here all day, but I'll give you one quick story that's really fun. I'm 14 years old. I weigh about 100 pounds, a skinny kid, and Saturday morning comes and Mr. Kroc comes in the back door.
Yep.
And I hear, "Mikey, how you doing?" I said, "Oh dear, Mr. Kroc is here." I'm shaking. And he takes me by the ear, and he couldn't do that today, but he takes me by the ear and drags me out to the parking lot. and shows me weeds in the garden, in the little park, the garden between the parking stalls, and wants to know why I didn't pull them. It's not my job. He says, never say that's not your job. You see it, you fix it. Then he had me take off my paper hat, my apron, my McDonald's shirt. Here I am with my white t-shirt, my black pants, and skinny little kid. And he has me open up the trash can, you know, the fiberglass trash can out in the parking lot, and pull out a lot of the papers, the bags and the cups. He says, I want you to go up and down the street, and I want you to throw them in along the street, along the gutter. And don't let anyone see you. So, okay. And I begin to do that. I come back. He says, now get dressed, put on your shirt and your apron. And here's a lobby pan, a little toy broom and a little lobby pan. He says, I want you to very boldly and in front of everybody, go up and down the street and pick up that paper. See, he wanted everyone to know how busy McDonald's was. And then he wanted to know wanted everyone to know what good citizens McDonald's was. Well, that's how you did some guerrilla marketing in those days when you didn't have any money for advertising. You know?
That's innovation, right?
That's innovation. That's entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
He never knew any limits. He never knew any, he always found a way to get the job done.
That's a great story. And thanks for sharing that. I'm going to shift it over to the other end. We have a question that says, have you ever dealt with age-related issues, specifically as it relates to senior executives, senior entrepreneurs?
Me?
Yeah.
Story of my life.
I imagine.
You know, when you start with age, it's the same as starting with unemployment or lack or fear. You're starting with the problem. Mrs. Eddy founded the Monitor, I think when she was 90 or 88 or something like that.
88.
Yeah.
Yep.
The idea doesn't know how old you are. It doesn't know your gender. It doesn't know your educational background. It doesn't know your bank account balance.
Right.
And you know, Ray Kroc, when he started McDonald's, already had a career behind him. So it doesn't have anything to do with any of that. Although there are places like SCORE for senior citizens to help share their talents with younger people coming up. Mm-hmm. There's opportunities in business to go to a company and say, with young management, and say you'd like to be a consultant and help train and give some wisdom to the younger managers coming up. You don't have any aspirations of advancement. You just want to contribute. There are so many opportunities for seniors, people I know that are retired. Their schedule is busier than ever because they've learned that they have so much to give and they want to give. And boy, when you want to give, there's always takers. So that's got to be the mode of giving, not starting with the limitation, I'm too old.
Well, I'm going to shift a little bit here because I remember something. I'm going to kind of come back to this that you said earlier when you were talking about Color Me Mine, I believe it was, that was failing. And you came in and kind of, there was a $3 million debt, right? So talk a little bit about what you have to do, or where should you start? Where did you start to think about redoing that? And my gosh, first of all, I mean, taking on that kind of debt in maybe a failing enterprise, where did you start to turn that around, and how did you get motivated to do that?
Yeah, and boy, there was plenty of bad press about it too.
I can well imagine.
We were publicly held, and everybody, and Koo Koo Roo's stock was flying high, and the Wall Street Journal was calling it "Color Me Blind."
Oh gosh!
And,
oh my!
And it was just horrific. But I knew this idea of communal bonding and individual expression had a need for mommy and me, mother and children. And that was so strong that I was able to convey that vision with the funders. And the funders had an equal understanding of it, and they agreed. And I saw Color Me Mine strictly as a vehicle, not as a concept that I could make money off of, but a vehicle for this idea. Purpose-driven profitability. And as long as I stayed with the purpose, we would be fine. And I had a background was in franchising for all those years in the restaurant business. I basically ran publicly held companies and were franchising. And we were trying to run these Color Me Mines ourselves. And I saw it being a more community intimate concept that needed an owner on the premises. So the other idea that came to me was franchise it.
So that's kind of where, so, and I don't mean to interrupt, but there's another question is, how do you promote? I mean, obviously you say local, franchising, how do you find those people, and how do you promote and prospect when you've said, okay, we got to get the word out and we got to find
I never advertised one day for a franchisee. I went into the stores, redesigned them, focused around mom, and 100% of our franchisees over the next 30 years were customers that fell in love with what we were providing. And the applications started coming in on their own because they saw the vision with me. They knew I was filling a need they never even thought about. And when that clicked, it was like a light switch going on. And it wasn't a case of paying down a $3 million debt. The company was losing at a rate of $3 million a year.
Oh, wow.
And the franchising was going to shrink those losses, and did so. And it was through franchising that it happened, but I never had to prospect. I never had to do that. Now, I did have to take the first couple of them and virtually give the franchises away to prove the concept. I had to have proof of concept, and I needed a couple of successful franchisees to do that. And I mentioned that in my talk, that proof of concept is one of the human footsteps you have to take before you lay out a lot of cash and commit yourself to leases and other things like that. You need to prove your vision works, and then you're off to the races. Then it's going to be hard to stay up with the vision. It'll be dragging you along.
Did you find that you had resistance? Did you bring some new ideas, new thoughts? And was there old business models, and did you face some of that?
No. I mean, if I did, from an employee or anyone else, I just politely told them they were working at the wrong company.
Got it.
You have to stay so strictly to the mission and not allow any distraction or anyone to pull you off of what you know to be the reason you're there. You can't deviate at all. And well, you look at the growth of Christian Science in the early days, and Mrs. Eddy's just strict adherence. When she said it, that's the way it was. Look at the opposition she had to having the words Christian Science in the Monitor head, title, the Christian Science Monitor. Everyone tried to talk her out of it. Everyone, right down to Calvin Fry and Adam Dickey. They all tried to talk her out of it. And one last try, the head of the Publishing Society walked into her office, and the meeting lasted about 3 minutes. When he came out, all the rest of the directors were in the hallway waiting for the answer. And his answer was, the name of the paper shall be the Christian Science Monitor. She just wouldn't tolerate anything that deviated from what her vision was, what the revelation that came to her in thought. And that's an example that's relevant for all of us. Stick to your guns.
Well, in all these things, you've got so many things that you've done and so many things you're doing at the same time. How do you manage the workload when you start a new program with the other work that you're doing?
Oh, there's always time. Time is not, there's no limit there. The way I always ran my companies was something that you guys teach in Albert Baker, and that's servant leadership. And you want to pull out the best in the team that you've surrounded yourself with. And so you learn to delegate, trust, support, and make other people successful by aligning their thought with that same vision, like-minded purpose. That's always the answer, and that doesn't take time. That takes love. That takes, you know, when you're around someone who genuinely cares about you, you'll do anything for that person.
Well, I think we've covered an awful lot of ground today, Mike. I'm going to launch our poll so that those that have been attending can give us their feedback and tell us if they liked what we did and they want us to keep doing it. So I'm going to launch that poll. So you folks that are out there, please take a few minutes. It won't take you but a couple minutes to fill this, answer these quick questions with this poll. I'm going to bring back my screen.
You didn't tell me I was going to be scored.
Well, isn't that the way of it? How many times have you walked in and been surprised by something?
That's right.
Certainly with me, I'm sure. And any of you that have any more closing comments, we had some really good, I love this comment. I'm in finance side of things, but involved in team decisions, great interactions with local businesses to innovate. I'm so inspired in bringing the ideas to the team. So, you know, be sure that as the things that you're learning, that you're putting into practice out in your everyday life, there's some great thoughts, great wisdom and insights here. As we move along here, I just want to bring this slide up. I brought it in last week. We have great resources at the Albert Baker Fund. This is our college to career roadmap. Now, it has in that a lot of wonderful links for everyone. So that doesn't really matter if you're in college or a recent grad, or you've been in business for 25, 30, 40 years. There's some terrific resources in there. I wanted to mention that. If you want to connect directly to Mike, Mike is a career ally, been a career ally since we started this thing, was at our kickoff event in LA. And so if you want to connect with Mike, you can go to the abfcareeralliance.org, click on one of the tabs for job seekers, career allies, or students, and on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see our Twitter feed. And I've posted Mike's career connection. So all you have to do is click on that and that link and request the connection, and we'll connect you right directly with Mike. I post, we have a career connections to jobs board, and I post career connections and jobs and internships on our social media regularly. So be sure that you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you're not a career ally,
become one.
Thank you, Mike. Why should they become one, Mike? Have you enjoyed it?
Oh, there's nothing that comes close to the interaction of ideas with people that you can help and can learn from what you have, and you can learn from what they have. There's a synergy that takes place that is not to be compared. And the program that we've set up at Albert Baker is so strong and so practical. I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you, Mike. It's just been such an incredible, almost an hour now. And again, we need career allies in all kinds of walks, of life and professions. And all you have to do is go to the abfcareeralliance.org, click the Career Ally tab, and there's lots of FAQs. And if you have any specific questions or more information, or you'd like more information, or you're having any difficulties registering, email me, Robin at albertbakerfund.org. And remember that The ideas that Mike shared with you today are practical, responsible, current, realistic. Thank you, Mike, so very much for being here with us and all the wonderful things that you do in support of the Albert Baker Fund and in your community. It's just terrific stuff.
Well, thank you, Robin. My pleasure.
And thank you to the incredible team at the Albert Baker Fund for helping me and supporting the Net Effect webinar series. I had a terrific time on this webinar. And remember, it's not just about working hard and casting the net. You got to, like Mike said earlier, why not seek by listening that which inspires you to even higher achievements? So this is Robin Jones signing off for Mike and myself for the Net Effect Career Conversations and Connections. Thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.